Welcome to another edition of the Kanban Guide. I guess a small batch Kanban with the Kanban. With the Kanban Guide. With us, as always, is Pratik. He drove Nisha away
again.
Yeah. We were just talking about how we're surprised that she ever shows up ever. In this particular video, we are going to be talking about the optional addendum, kind of add-on to the Kanban Guide. But before we get into that, Pratik, kind of refresh us about what's the difference between the Kanban Guide and this optional addendum thingy.
Yeah, the Kanban Guide describes, in essence, it's the minimum viable Kanban. Like, what are the things that you must do in order to say you're doing Kanban? That list is sufficient to say that you're doing Kanban, but probably not complete from the perspective of all the things you might need to do to get the most out of Kanban.
Sorry. Yeah.
Hence the addendums.
As we said in the very first video in this series, the Kanban Guide itself is by design, by purpose, on purpose, not sufficient. You know, but it does set that minimum requirements. So we do recognize that in certain contexts, you're going to need a little bit more. So what the addendum is are optional, and I can't stress enough that these are optional. Just as Pratik said, these are optional complementary practices that you may want to consider depending on what's going on in your context. So, you know, it's anything from maybe implementing some theory of constraint stuff. It's maybe, you know, considering some things about complexity. It's you know, some things that we talk about with right sizing and how to achieve flow. There's a whole list in there. And as Pratik was pointing out before we started recording here, this addendum, quite rightly so, is actually longer than the guide because there's really so much stuff packed in there. I know.
Yep. Yeah, and just because stuff is not in the addendum doesn't mean it cannot be added on as well. The addendum is a pretty decent listing of things that you could add on. There are probably other practices that are not even in the addendum. But yeah, it's there. It lays out a bunch of, as Dan said, theory of constraint stuff, a bunch of other practices that are complementary.
Yep. So if you do have some questions after reading the Kanban Guide, and you still have some questions about how do I maybe, is there anything more specific that I can look at in terms of applying this to my context, go take a look at the addendum. But just as you read it, just please keep in mind, again, we'll stress it again, keep in mind, those are complementary practices and they are optional complementary practices. Pratik, as always, love to give you the last word. Anything else you want to say about the addendum?
I'll just say where you find them. If you go to kanbanguides.org, on the top right-hand corner, you will say, as Dan has said probably 15 times already in this video, you will see the word optional addendum. And when you click on it, you'll be able to get to the addendum to the Kanban Guide.
So this video was brought to you by the word optional. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next episode.